Okay, so we're going to start with each of them will introduce themselves and tell a little bit about their caregiving experience and how long and where they're from and all that good stuff. So we'll start with Dick.
My name is loud enough. My name is Dick Blank. I was a caregiver for my wife for 10 and a half years. She had a diagnosis of early onset dementia, probably Alzheimer's type. I live in Missoula, Montana now. Moved here 12 years ago to be closer to family as we dealt with her process. My wife passed away 4 years ago, so I've done the whole journey from beginning to end, and been involved in various work advocating for what we need to do to deal with what is a significant problem in our society since.
My name is Linda Greiner. Is that okay? My daughter Amy just passed away January 23rd. Her birthday was January 20th, and she turned 40. I was never promised that much time with her. She was born with severe disabilities. She lived at home for 16 years, and I advocated in the state legislature for medically fragile group homes, and she got one of the first spots, and she was really happy there until her health issues got so much, and she had to go into the nursing home, which I'm from Missoula. The nursing home is in Missoula, so I got to see her every weekend, and I brought a laundry home just so I could still feel like mom. But I went to visit her on her birthday, and she was just fabulous. And I brought cheesecake because that was her very favorite thing to do. But she took a turn on Sunday, and the 23rd, that evening, she passed away. It was tough. I was lucky to have her as long as I did.
My name is Margot Wright. Is that loud enough for everybody? Okay. I care for my mother. She has Alzheimer's. Until September, I had a sister who would help. Sorry. And September until now, I've been doing it 24/7. I work 3 hours a week. Yay, it's my break. So it's been very difficult for me. I don't have resources. It's very hard because as they develop further into the disease, they don't really speak. So it's hard for her because she's frustrated. She understands, but it's hard for me because I have no idea what she's even saying half the time. She uses facial expressions, so if you can do yes or no questions, that's my communication all day long. So she is able to walk with assistance. She is able to pretty much feed herself, but everything else you do for her. And in March, the first week of March, she had a bladder infection, and some of you may know as the elderly get bladder infections, they kind of do very strange things. She got up in the middle of the night and fell and broke her neck. So that's also been a challenge because of the neck brace on her. She can only see her meal here. She can't see it here. So it's been a challenge. It's been very, very difficult, but rewarding. Before she became really bad, I was able to, hear family stories. So I'm going to let you go ahead.
My name is Jeannie Reinsberg. I'm from Kalispell, Montana. I'm a caregiver for 14 years for my 3 special need grandchildren I've adopted. I wouldn't change it. it's my new normal. So,
Thank you.
it's my new normal. So we're blessed. I've got to see a miracle firsthand. My little guy was born blind, deaf, and 18 different types of seizures disorders, and cerebral palsy. We got cerebral palsy down to a stage 1 from a 10 to a 1, and we have sight, we have hearing, and we have no more seizures. There's no medical reason why. I believe it's a miracle. So, but we do have other challenges, and it's a daily basis, and I'm blessed. So,
All right. So Jeannie, we'll start with you. Could you share your experience when you realized when you became a caregiver?
when I picked Michael up from the hospital and realized that I'm gonna have him forever, that he would not be independent living, that my life was going to change drastically, because at the time I was working, I had 3 jobs, and I was going through the empty nest syndrome, and I picked up the wish book at Wendy's, and I said, oh, I think I'm going to adopt. And my manager goes, oh, be careful what you wish for. And I says, oh, but I'm so lonely. And within 6 months, I got the first one came to live with me, and from then on, that's where it came. And so now my house is full. So be careful what you wish for, but it's a blessing. So now my full-time job is them, and I'm blessed. I mean, we have journeys. I spent 4 years driving every week from Kalispell to Helena and to Butte. I did not miss 1 week coming down. I put them in residential and did not miss 1 week. I know every bump in the road, where to slow down. I think I had the deer name by name when I drove by them. I was faithful at it. I wore my poor vehicle out. I did not hit a deer with my vehicle, but I totaled my boyfriend's new car out. But I didn't hit the deer hit us. So it fell off the cliff onto the hood, so. But I learned that I needed a break, and you need to take time out for yourself so you can to take care of somebody else. You need to take care of yourself first. Mm-hmm. So I've learned that I go get my nails done, because I can look down and say, okay, this is for me, so I can take care of you. Because the kids, they were little, and they would look and say, oh, how pretty. You're so pretty, and they're so pretty. And it was like, okay, we're okay.
How about you, Linda? When did you realize?
Amy was my firstborn. And, I was a new mom. I didn't know, she had seizures, but they said, oh, she could outgrow that. And we were back and forth to the hospital. And 15 months later, I had my second daughter. And, I was taking care of Amy and Megan. But one day, Megan was in her crib, and she pulled herself up to stand. Amy never did that. Amy learned to sit. And that's when I knew that this is going to be a long time. This is going to be a job.
All right. As a caregiver, you notice your loved one experiencing changes. Caregivers also deal with changes. How has that experience changed you? And we'll give this to Dick.
The easy ones. Just to put it in perspective, my wife and I were married for almost 50 years when she passed away. And I think that the one thing I can say that it changed me, and basically we had a dynamite relationship, we basically got along so well. We never argued. We got that over with in 5 years. Basic family joke was that she never did learn how to butter toast. And we used to laugh about that. But basically, as I went through the process, I'm a retired physician. So when I walked into the hospital, I walked into my x-ray department, things happened because I wanted them to happen. And they happened. When you're dealing with somebody with dementia, that doesn't work. And the more you try to push the idea that you can make it happen instead of just adapting to the situation, the better off you are. I had to learn how to do that. I had to learn how to step back, how to let her kind of show me what she wanted to have happen. I think that the biggest mistake most people who care for somebody with dementia make is when you think you know what's going on inside, you think you can predict. The hardest thing is the unpredictability of the situation. In one moment, she could be happy and laughing, and another moment, she could be angry, and you basically have to be prepared to make yourself adapt to what's going on. I believe fully that when people with dementia have fear, it's because they are frightened. When they're angry, they are frightened, and you have to avoid contributing to the problem that they have. So I learned to be a more patient person. I'm still not very good, but I'm a heck of a lot better than I was before I started.
How about you, Jeannie? How those experiences that changed you?
I've learned to be patient. Changed me as a parent. Let's see. The kids rode bicycles in the apartment. My adult son come in, he says, we never got to do that. And I said, well, they're my grandkids. And we had, instead of balloon fights with water, we did wash rag fights. We threw water out of the tub, and it's the little things just we got to do, and it changed. I mean, it just... Instead of like, oh, we got to hurry, go do this, it was just to stop and enjoy the moment. You know, it's like, okay, it's going to be a different day, moment changed. At the same time, I did get to feel, when I first got them, all my friends were going through empty nest syndrome, and they didn't want to be around somebody with 3 babies. And so I was isolated. So that's when I wrapped myself around them and they were my world, and we became that.
Right. So. Margot, do you have anything to add with that question?
I actually learned how to teach Pilates. So
wow.
That was I always said, I'm a fitness person and I teach a lot, and I always said, I am never going to teach that because you have to put your mind into it. It's like yoga. And I changed. I am now very passionate. I try to understand the smallest things, and I have to step back a lot because, like he said, you can't push it. You can't do it your way. You have to accept the fact that they're terrified, and, gentle and passion. That's the biggie.
Yeah, well said. All right. Linda, could you describe what led you to knowing you needed or wanted respite?
I didn't even know about respite, I was a mom, and Amy was going to a special needs school, and I was a little crazy. I was very intense, and everything had to be perfect for Amy. And I was there every day. And finally somebody said, Linda, do you ever think about taking a break? What are you talking about? And one of the teachers offered to take Amy for a weekend. Well, first off, I had to check her whole house out. You know, I had pages of instructions. And of course, she's been teaching Amy for 2 or 3 years at this point. And she came by and she picked up Amy. And of course, I was hysterical at first. But I had 3 other little ones. And we got to have pizza that weekend. Amy always had to have specially prepared meals. And we got to take a walk. We got to do things that other people do. And that's when I realized, you know, for balance for my family, this is something I have to do.
Right. How about you, Margot?
Actually, a girlfriend told me about it. She's always saying, well, let's go out. And I'm like, yeah, right. So I followed up on that. But I do have to say that in my case, it's very difficult because I do have a gentleman that owns his own business that comes in and helps when I, get to go to the doctor or teach my classes. But you have to go around the company's time because they're so busy. It's not like you can say, hey, there's this movie my girlfriend and I want to go. It's like, when do you have time for me to take a break? And that's wrong. Mm-hmm. Because if I need to walk out of the house now, I should. And my mom does need 24-hour care. It's, I can go outside in the yard, but I have to be back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It's not like I can just go out and mow the lawn or anything. You have to be really flexible on your time. So that's the down part. Mm-hmm. Because I haven't found enough. First of all, if I had family, I probably wouldn't need it. Second, if the friends that I have knew how to care for somebody like that, then, I'd probably have more areas to turn to, but I have to use agencies, and you go by what they have to provide. So that's the difficult part.
Right. Okay. Dick, how has using respite made a difference to you and to your loved one?
There were actually, I think, using respite, first of all, I really encourage anybody who's in the position, you do need it. Whether you believe you need it or not, you do. But I also think that the person who has, in my case, dementia, needs respite as well. My wife was a very independent, strong-willed, spirited woman, and that's what made me love her. However, she was not in a position of having me tell her what to wear, when to eat, blah, 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 which is what's going to happen when you deal with the dementia side of it. When I brought somebody else into the picture, she would be happier. And because why? Because she had women friends. She had a life also, and she was allowed to express that life. And in her case, it was cross-country skiing and hiking. And I had a neat thing, pardon me for belaboring the point, but this group of women in Missoula approached me and asked if my wife was physically able to keep up if they took her hiking. Well, my wife was raised in southwestern Colorado and could hike anybody into the dirt. And in fact, she did hike the whole group except for the woman who asked me, who also could hike anybody into the dirt. In other words, it was something she needed. What I needed was some time to be me. I would take hikes my wife and I are both only children, so solitude was an important part of our existence. So I spent time hiking out at the Rattlesnake Wilderness in Missoula. And that's how I would go out, take a little time to think, take a little time to be me. And I think that's really important because as I now have dealt with 4 years of no one there, I had myself still somewhat intact when I got to the end of the journey. I also started to volunteer, interestingly enough, with Meals on Wheels, since that's come up. And I still do that. And what did that do? I got to meet some really neat people because the people who deliver meals are just neat people. They're the kind of people are not going to be confrontational. They're going to love life. They're going to be giving people. This was really good for me. And if you think about it, what did I just do? I made me good, which made me a better caregiver. And that's, I think, the bottom line. And you'll be better for it.
All right, let's just go on down the line. Linda?
What did respite do for me?
Yeah, how's it made a difference for you and your loved one?
Number one, it helped my other 3 daughters be normal. Because when you have a child with disabilities, your family's not like any other family. But they got my attention, and we could do, fun things. For me, I was raised Catholic, and we want to talk about guilt. It really helped. It helped me my favorite thing to do in the world is read. I could sit down and read and not feel guilty. That was big. And Amy loved it. First off, you got to understand, it's not easy to find the perfect respite provider. That's tough. But when you find a good one, it was a vacation for her. It was her respite from me. Amy and I had a game because it was always important to me that she would eat, because that's how she would play her game. She'd stop eating, and I could sit there for hours with that spoon right in front of her face, and she would just like. But if somebody else fed her, she was great. She was wonderful. It was just me. It was a mom thing, So, yeah, respite was a gift. And when Amy passed away, that was the first thing I thought about when I was putting together the obituary. I've put together an obituary so many times. But that was the one place that I wanted to give back, was respite, because it's so important.
All right, Margot?
Being that I have to do it 24 hours, I need it more than I actually even take it. And I would love to be able to be gone 4 hours, even a week, in one big chunk. Mm-hmm. But there again, I have to depend on somebody else. And I know that one time when I took 4 hours, no one could do anything. So it was like still no communication. You're going into the stores to talk to people, and to me, physical activity would be fun. Socializing with friends would be fun, and that is very important. And I know for my mom, because I can't transport her in my car, I can't get her out of my car if I got her into it. It's good for her too, because the more she socializes, the better her brain is too. So I wished I could take more time, and I do feel guilty when I can't. So,
Jeannie.
Respite has been very helpful for me and the children, because I think the break apart, and when we come back together, we're all refreshed, re-energized to see each other, and the compassion is more there of the love that we share and have for each other. Because when we're together 24/7, we're so wrapped up in the rat race of what we're living and doing, and when we come back, it's like, oh, I've really missed you. So, and thank you. Those little hugs are everything.
Right. So Dick, when we were visiting last night a little bit, you brought up what was real important is that end of life planning. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I really do. This is I have several crusades. By the way, speaking of hugs, I think if you want to do something for somebody, give a caregiver a hug. What the rip, right? It really feels good. They probably need it, and they're not going to be offended by it. Also, if you know somebody who has dementia, if the circumstances are right, give them a hug too. And now to get back to the question, I had to make that pitch.
Okay.
But one of the things that we did right, my mother and father-in-law both had dementia. They did no end of life. My father-in-law was a lawyer. I'm not going to comment further on that, but he did nothing. I mean, my wife finally got them to give her a power of attorney when they were near the end. Thank God for that. But they had done no end-of-life planning, no discussion, no anything. So my wife and I, in fact, there's nobody in this room that shouldn't have done what I'm going to just propose you do right now already. We got together after that and said, we are not going to stick our children with this problem. If you want to see a family fight, leave yourself undeclared, and you're going to get plenty of them. So we sat down. We did a living will. We did a medical power of attorney. We arranged our finances and straightened around, and we had a talk with each other about how much we wanted to do if the other person developed a fatal disease process. And our family joke was that if one of us was on a respirator, we were supposed to wait until nobody was looking and trip over the cord. In other words, neither one of us wanted to go to extremes. When my wife reached her end-of-life period, she developed a severe anemia. She was white as a sheet. She had some chronic disease process. Her hemoglobin, for those of you who have any medical background, was 3.9, which is about a fourth of normal. So she was obviously dying of something. I was very comfortable under those circumstances to know that she did not want to live in the condition she was. It also enabled me, we were on the Choices Bank for the state of Montana, which is really easy to do. I was able to be able to say, okay, here's what my wife wants, and I'm going to do it. And you're going to run into situations where you have to force things a little bit and be strong. It's a lot easier to be strong if you're on good, solid grounds. And so do it, have a family discussion, and nobody wants to talk about it. But you should. It makes it easier, and it hurts less.
I did that with my girls because one time Amy was life flighted from Polson into St. Pat's, and we didn't know if she was going to make it. And so that's when I, did the end of life. But I did mine at the same time. And so they were both, it was complete, that was done. My father left us in a similar situation, and I don't want my kids to go through that. And so I've paid for my funeral, and I had to sit down with my kids and explain this to them. I said, there's things in the house. I want you to write them down, whatever you guys want. We'll put it in a little piece of paper, and we'll have it with my will. And they look at me and they go, are you trying to tell us something, Mom? I go, no, I am fine, but I want you to know all this stuff now so you guys are still friends afterwards. Amen.
Okay, does anybody have anything else to add?
I do.
Okay.
You can find out who your family is really fast when you're writing one. I do have 3 siblings, and my mom didn't have any. She had a will, and she had some things in it. So I was, of course, taking care of. I was her POA, of medical and finances. So, but it was funny that my family would say, "Well, you need to do this." And I'm like, "Really? Where are you when we need you?" Granted, they think they're doing something wonderful, but it's like, well, I want this and I want that. Take it then, because I don't want a problem. And I know that as my mom got worse, I made sure that her children and her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren could come and take whatever they wanted, because I don't want to go through that. I don't want to make it worse. It's funny because they'd come in and go, "You need to rearrange your furniture." I'm like, why? Mom knows her route. He knows. But yeah, do it ahead of time. Do it now. And do yours. Definitely. So.
Okay, is there any questions from you guys out there? No. All right.
Well, I just wanted to say something.
Yeah,
I
please.
might as well add something. Situations like this, when we're all together, they're so empowering. They're so important because there's a lot of people out there that don't understand what we're going through, caring for our children, caring for our elderly parent or aunt. But when you connect with somebody that's experiencing similar things, it's like, I'm no longer alone. I'm not the only one doing this. And it helps you breathe. So it's important to do things like that and to meet with other people because you're not alone. You feel that way sometimes, but I want you to know you're not alone. That's what I always do.
My question is about the huge need for help for people who do not have the resources as well as some other people do, and how much more difficult the burden is for them. And how can we get some of the money that's set aside here and there for administering things in different levels of government down to where it can help the people that really are desperate for some financial help. I know we have coupon situations and things like that, but and I know that we used to have, for instance, adult daycare places in Helena, and I don't know if we have any or not anymore. We used to have one right across from us, and it seems like some of those things could be funded and not so much money all spent and set aside for administration. We need this money to get down to the people. I grew up in a home where we, were financially not very well off, and we had a situation where my baby sister became desperately ill and didn't receive the medical help she needed where we lived, and so she was desperately handicapped, and we cared for her for 4 years until she passed away. But my parents wouldn't accept the help, but we managed, and it took them a long time to pay off all the medical bills. But I just see so much of it and what it does to, I mean, our family was loving, but you still suffer. Like my brothers were young, really young, and didn't have the attention, like some of you mentioned, that really they deserved, because my mother was so involved, and all of us were. We cared for her. And I sat up night after night after night holding her and rocking her so she wouldn't cry all night, things like that. So, but the thing I'm trying to get at is how do we help more for people who have fewer resources?
Run for office.
Be an advocate.
Be an advocate, because that is so important that you. I mean, I was Amy's only voice, and you were your sister's voice. We are our loved one's voice, and the only way we can be heard is if we get our face in front of those legislatures that we elect and put in office, but they don't have a clue what we're going through until you go up there and tell them. It's not easy, but you can do it.
Yeah, and I would advise that, for example, this year House Bill 35 or 36, I forget which now because I have testified on both of them, was to develop a training program for volunteer respite workers, recognizing full well that a lot of people cannot afford to hire help. I could afford it, and that's fine. But so that bill failed in committee. So the more people that get involved, I'm sure AARP has an advocacy thing. I know the Alzheimer's Association has advocacy, and Missoula Aging Services and the area agencies on aging. There are many others that I'm sure that I don't even know about, but I signed up for every one of those things. They'll send you an alert, because God knows I don't understand what goes on in the legislature, much less in Congress. Giving you phone numbers, giving you contact people, and you can do it. If you can pick up the phone and call, if you can send an email, you can do it too. And that's what we need to do, is we need to make more noise, because it's really easy to avoid somebody who's an isolated caregiver and doesn't say anything.
Where do we start with finding out about resources? As an advocate for my daughter, my world revolving around her for the past 13 years, this hearing about caregiver lifespan just within the last month and a half, and that's where I seen the article in the AARP magazine. That was all that I've seen. I did go to their website, so I started learning a little bit more about it. But then within about the last month, if that long, there's been commercials on TV, and which is good. No information is really given except that's what it is. Nothing was advertised about this that I'm aware of. But anyway, what are the resources? You know, for me to start thinking about being a caregiver, even though that's what I've been, and knowing full well in all these years that I'm supposed to be taking care of myself and all that. Sure. How do you get there? Who do you call? What, or if you do, who is it that you talk to? Is it MILP? Is it Family Outreach? Is it, you know, that's my question.
Yeah, it's whoever you're working with.
Sometimes, you know, like hospitals, my daughter was in and out of the hospital quite a bit. They have a social worker there that can point you in the right direction. If your child's in school, there should be resources there, or there should be a way of finding out that you don't have that.
My daughter's out of school now. 22. She went all through school. Again, everything was speech, occupational. Sure. She'd suffered a traumatic brain injury, and some physical disabilities because of that, but was able to go all through school in the special needs class. Graduated, and she now is a activities aide up at Touchmark 3 days a week for just a few hours, calling bingo, hanging in the memory care unit, which she loves, and they love her because she's young and everything. But again, where do I start? I don't have a social worker.
Exactly.
Hospital. Would it be, are with the AWARE program. We're with, have been with Family Outreach. We've been with Physical Disability. We're Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. All those are people that we're associated with being an advocate and learning all this, because when you leave the hospital, there is no book that they send home with you, learning all this. So because I'm aware that there are support groups for Alzheimer's, for drugs, for this, or mental health, which she does have some mental health issues at this point, being older with a traumatic brain injury, support groups that way, but I don't see a support group for caregivers.
Well, we do have a new caregiver support group that just started in January through the Bridges program, and so it's real small at this point. We're hoping it will grow. It's in Helena, yeah. It's a Bridges program through the Covenant Methodist Church, and we have someone that's going to be talking about that this afternoon after lunch. So stay tuned, and you'll learn more about that. Yeah. Oh, our Lifespan Respite website? Yeah, you said you checked that out? Yeah, she mentioned that. So yeah, that's there's lots of resources on that, and we have our ADRC resource directory that we work on a regular basis, so you can do searches. Yeah, we're working on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have a dual role for being here today. Many of you may know me from the work that I did for the state of Montana. I'm retiring with the state of Montana on the 26th of this month. But so my first comment is the waiver program. There are many waivers within the state of Montana. And to add some information for you, the waiver is for people who meet a financial eligibility component, in other words, low income. And there are many waivers. There's the seriously disabling mental illness waiver. The waiver that I currently work for is for elderly and physically disabled people. So regardless of the age, so a child could be on a waiver or a 90-year-old person could be on a waiver, but they have to meet level of care, which many of the people who have been talking today, the caregiver role that they fit into, their person that they're caring for would fit the level of care. So those two things, level of care and financial eligibility. So that would be of help to many people around the state who are low income. There are ways to pay for respite through those waiver programs, some of them, and that covers the developmental disabilities program. It covers the, like I said, the seriously disabling mental illness program. And Jane Wilson is here from that program also. She just raised her hand. And then the program that I currently work for is the elderly and physically disabled. The other hat that I'm wearing today, because I am retiring from the state at the end of the month, is that I have a mediation program. I'm the owner of a mediation program. So the end of life information that Dick talked about earlier, I have had personal experiences and work-related experiences where mediation can help families get through, negotiate. Maybe the siblings are not all in agreement about what needs to be done with the floor coverings or whatever it is, but mediation is a possibility for people. And the Montana Mediation Association website has people all across the state that can provide mediation services, not just me, even though my specialty is elder care and health care. The third thing that I wanted to mention, and then I'll give up the microphone, is the pay it forward idea. My father died in September, so that changed my role as a caregiver in my own personal family. My children that are now adults, they had disabilities, have disabilities. they don't need as much time, but there were times when they were very intense. They had very intense needs, and I was the parent and the caregiver in that situation. And because my children are twins when they were babies, if there was ever a time in my life that I had compassion fatigue, it was when my babies were infants and they were sick and really, every newborn is demanding. Mine were exceptional, let me just say that. So as we go through life, we have periods where we're heavy in the midst of the caregiving, and there's periods of life when it eases up a little bit. And for myself, one of the reasons that I participate in this group is because I believe in that pay it forward idea. So when my load is a little bit easier to bear, then what can I do from a service standpoint of volunteering and helping a friend, a church person? What part can I do to help that other person that's struggling for the moment? Because we all go through life like this with our caregiving. So that's it.
Very good. Over here. Think you wanted?
Yeah, she does.
Okay, we'll come back.
I'd like to suggest 2 resources for folks with compassion fatigue. One is the local ombudsman, and in Helena, the 2 ombudsmen help with people who are contemplating nursing home placement or assisted facility placement, and they're at Rocky Mountain Development Council, and I'm sure they are at other area agencies on aging across the state. The other thing that helped me, and I moved my dad here from Los Angeles in 2003, and I was his daily advocate, durable power of attorney, and caregiver while I was a state employee. And I'm a retired state employee now, and I feel like I'm on vacation. But my dad lived in a nursing home for all of the time that he lived, and he lived until 2015. And my dad had post-traumatic stress from World War II, and he also had dementia. And the other entity that is a great resource that really helped me was I took the NAMI Family to Family class, and that was a 12-week class every Tuesday night here in Helena. And I really learned a lot about my dad, and it made me a better caregiver.
I obviously have more knowledge and interest about dementia things, but your area agency on aging is a good place to start. I also testified on a bill that was going to increase funding. That didn't get out of committee either. I guess I should never testify again. But
3 years.
but the point is that is a place that you can go to get. They have access to the resources there, and so that's a good place to start to get yourself pointed. And the other things that you just mentioned are available in Missoula as well. So there's stuff out there, but it's hard to find sometimes. That's definitely true.
I just wanted to talk about, you talked about end-of-life planning. That's been a really big concern in this community that I know of, being part of the Transitions of Care Coalition here for Helena, and now in Bozeman. They just started there. Dave Ellis at St. Pete's has actually been trained to do end-of-life planning and all that paperwork. They have nurses at St. Pete's that he has trained through that program. There are communities all across the country where they can say they've got 98% of the community has done their advanced planning. And for Helena, that's one of the pushes for the hospital, for that Transitions of Care Coalition, to try and get Helena to that point. So I would suggest calling St. Pete's and seeing if you can get a hold of Dave Ellis there. And then Area 4, there's a gentleman there, John Hoffland, who will sit down and talk to people about, I don't know if he's still there. I heard somebody say no. Oh, Debbie McNally then. That will sit down with people and talk to you about programs that you might not know about that you qualify for. So I know that was a resource here in this area that was wonderful. There's a website called caregiverstress.com that's maintained by Home Instead Senior Care all across the country. We're actually a global company, so we maintain that with information on all sorts of topics for people. And then there's Hilarity for Charity, and not a lot of people know about that, but they help with Alzheimer's. They give grants for care. And we've actually had people here in Helena and in Livingston that have received grants for thousands of dollars worth of care for an entire year. One family has gotten 15 hours a week paid for by Hilarity for Charity, and their website is hilarityforcharity.org. So you were asking about financing. They're a fantastic group. It takes a little bit of work getting through the paperwork, but it's well worth it.
Thank you.
I would like to add, by the way, the MSU Extension offices have a lot of planning documents. Marcia Getting, who several of us here know pretty well, would probably beat me with a stick if she thought I'd not mention that. But really, you can call your local your local extension, your county extension office, and she is sharp as can be. And those documents are good. They're self-explanatory, and you can do it yourself as well. So that's available to anybody that's got a phone or a computer. Use it. It's good.
I was just going to add to that because I'm Marcia's colleague in Extension.
Tell her I said something.
Yeah, that was great segue. You can go for it's teaching self-care, powerful tools for caregivers, and I was looking up for some folks here. We now have it listed under montanaptc.org, and you can find who's offering a class in your community or how to be trained to be a facilitator. Also, along with Marcia's great guides, they're called Mont Guides, and you can go to msuextension.org and look up a variety of publications. I've done some with Marcia. We've got some on end of life, talking to your family. I've got some on stress and depression. So that's available. And then Jeannie's probably aware of this, but we also have the Montana Grandparents Raising Grandchildren Project, and that has 30 locations across the state. And as people are talking, why we do local support groups is because everybody in the community may know where to get a certain resource, where at the state level it's hard to know exactly where. So, who's the best person to talk to at which agency? Or if you're in a real rural area, where do I even start to go? And they may know of a local church that provides some support. So do check out Extension.
Well, I heard the massage therapist is out in the hallway. We also have, during lunch, we have a little icebreaker and some questions in there in the packet. So if you could kind of have that handy, so you can talk about with that a little bit with who you eat with today. We want you to kind of do some brainstorming of, what is available in your communities. What would you like to see in your communities for caregivers? And lastly, what could you do in your communities that would help support your caregivers? And then we'll have some facilitation by Candace and Tim this afternoon to kind of pull that together and see where we can take the next steps for respite. All right? So thank you. And thanks to our panel members.